The holidays this year are poised to look a bit different for the royal family. King Charles's younger brother, Prince Andrew, is set to step down from 2 yearly Christmas celebrations, according to royal sources and as reported by the BBC, behind the glittering veneer of Buckingham Palace, where marble corridors rang out with duty and tradition. Rumors of the Queen's son had long floated among the staff. Not of the dashing Duke the public had once known, nor the naval hero Britain revere, but a man his own servants characterized as cruel, childish, and mercurial. For years, silence had protected him, a wall constructed of privilege protocol and journalistic self-restraint. But silence would eventually have to end. One former maid finally defected, revealing the reality beneath the palace's gloss. She described tantrums, strange rituals, and humiliations that were life inside Prince Andrew's household. This is Charlotte Briggs' story, an eye-opening insight into the Duke of York's real conduct and the shadow it falls under not just on his name, but on the monarchy as well. Charlotte was 21 when her life took a dramatic turn with a simple telephone call. Plying diligent day jobs in peaceful villages, she was unexpectedly pitched a role within Buckingham Palace. To her, to many a young Brit brought up in awe of the crown, this was not just work. It was a privilege, a vocation, a privilege to work for history itself. The exuberance of her family mirrored her own. The royal household stood for duty, service, and ageless prestige. Charlotte had pictured graceful halls, visions of royalty, and a life filled with tradition. But when she got there, the reality was very different. She was not in a queen's wing or working for a kind veteran royal. But for Prince Andrew, a man rumored to be moody, demanding, and impossible to please. The job, she quickly discovered, was feared by staff, an assignment no one wanted. What had started out as pride had soon shifted to anxiety. Glamour of palace living dissipated, and fear and tension took their place. Her life was filled with silence, punctuated by cries of disapproval and a nagging fear of doing something wrong. To serve a royal, she learned, did not always mean serving someone virtuous. Sometimes it meant holding on for someone powerful. For Charlotte, sharing her story years afterward was not a bitter act, but one of telling the truth. This wasn't dish about a tough boss. It was an effort to peel back the veneer of royal perfection. If the Queen's own son could be cruel to his employees, what did that say about the system that allowed it to happen? Charlotte's initial encounter with the Duke's temper was over something as trivial as curtains. She had simply drawn the drapes across one window while doing an ordinary task, and found Prince Andrew bursting in, flailing with rage that a sliver of light was spilling through the gap. His fury was explosive, his language savage, as if she had done something terrible wrong. Shaking, Charlotte remained immobile as he bellowed, her eyes brimming with tears. Staff around her reacted hardly at all. They were too familiar with the routine. His tantrums were a part of normal life, unpredictable tempests to be steered clear of at all times. From that point on, she realized, survival was not about ability, but about placating. A book slightly out of place, a shoe that wasn't polished quite right, even the wrong intonation in her voice could spark another explosion. Behind palace walls, servants crept like prey, silent, watchful, giving warnings in whispers when he was in a bad temper. "He's awake," they'd whisper. "He's angry. Watch it." Prince Andrew didn't only insist on service. He insisted on submission. But his fury was merely half the tale. What unsettled Charlotte most were his fixations. Quirky, childish rituals that walked a thin line between oddity and manipulation. His personal quarters looked like shrines to order and dominance. At the very center of this strange universe was his notorious collection of stuffed animals. 72 soft toys, each one placed with military exactness. Bears, hippos, and other objects were placed strictly along laminated diagrams that described precisely where each toy must be placed and which way it must face. The staff spent hours being trained to get it right. One wrong move risked a tantrum. The same fanatical rules applied to his pajamas, his bed, and even his pillows. All of it had to be folded, put, and positioned in his own special code. One that made his quarters less like a royal suite and more like a child's playroom run by a tyrant. Other servants corroborated Charlotte's stories. They told of his pettiness and the constant reminders of hierarchy. He would call for staff to bring him things within reach, require them to stand silently while he dressed, and demand instant compliance at any time of the night. It wasn't idleness. It was domination, a conscious display of power. Behind those walls, the royal image broke down into a man driven by control and privilege, and a palace household existing in hushed fear of his wrath. Among palace staff, the refrain was always one. He treated the staff like trash, disposable tools to be used and then discarded. The pattern was impossible to miss. These weren't occasional outbursts of temper or harmless tics. They were habitual patterns of entitlement, made more cruel by years of living without consequence. Those who worked nearest to him realized they were not serving a leader or even a difficult employer. They were attending to a man who used cruelty as naturally as others engaged in small talk. Andrew's actions were not mere childishness. They were indicative of something far deeper, something born out of his history, and spoken of long before Charlotte Briggs ever entered the palace. The origins of his actions went back decades, fueled by tales relayed by those who knew him as a child. Even at childhood, the Queen's son had unnerving flashes of arrogance and brutality. Stories went around about him taunting guards, bullying animals, and bullying his younger brother, Edward. Members of the palace staff claimed he had earned nicknames that were in themselves telling. Baby Grumpling for his incessant whining, and the Snigger due to how he giggled at others' bad luck. His sense of superiority wasn't kept secret. It was openly brash. Occasionally, the staff resisted. A level-headed hand once pushed him face first into horse manure after tolerating one insult too many, and a footman, goaded beyond his endurance, struck him in the face outright. Even the Queen, normally protective, acknowledged that her son required discipline. Such instances were exceptions, however. The majority of servants, held fast by duty and fear of punishment, suppressed their bitterness and continued in silence. The behavior grew worse as Andrew matured. Cruelty bred entitlement, entitlement bred dominance, and dominance bred something more sinister. For years, the palace protected him. Bad news was deep-sixed, reporters were dissuaded, and loyal employees gagged by contract and intimidation. To reveal him was to threaten the monarchy itself, and very few were willing to risk that. But silence is not strong. It does not last. At some point, cracks begin to show. Scandals seeped into the tabloids as rumors, then emerged as confessions from individuals who could no longer withstand secrecy. Each fresh revelation nibbled at the gilded aura of a prince long shielded from reality. When Charlotte Briggs finally testified, her evidence wasn't a solitary complaint. It was the growing chorus. Her statement refigured Prince Andrew in public perception. No longer quirky, he was regarded as poisonous. Charm turned to vapor, the image replaced by a painting of cruelty and arrogance. Her tale explained what ensued: his catastrophic association with Jeffrey Epstein, the abasement of the BBC interview, the removal of his titles, and his withdrawal from public life. To the outside world, his fall seemed unexpected, but to those within the palace, it was the unavoidable outcome of decades of unchecked privilege. Briggs's exposes went beyond tantrums and teddy bears. They revealed a truth about the monarchy itself, that beneath the gilded veneer lay human failings amplified by power, concealed by secrecy, and justified for too long. Prince Andrew could be the Queen's pet son, but to the servants who worked under him, he was something else altogether. Their accounts bequeath a chilling question. If this is how he treated those nearest to him, what does it reveal about the institution that enabled it? The deeper truth isn't so much about Andrew. It's about the silence that enabled his actions. For decades, staff lived in terror of speaking out, afraid of losing their jobs or being destroyed for breaching the unwritten rule. Never shame the royals. The palace was not just an office. It was a citadel of confidentiality, guarded by loyalty vows, NDAs, and the suffocating burden of convention. When Charlotte Briggs finally broke her silence, she also debunked the fantasy that palace workers were willing participants in a fairy tale about royalty. Behind the closed doors, they suffered humiliation, tantrums, and rituals so that the world outside could continue to believe in crowns, carriages, and balcony waves. Her bravery encouraged others to contribute their own pieces of truth, tales that establish how brittle the monarchy really is when myth confronts reality. Every admission erodes its aura, reminding us that any organization founded on power is no stronger than the silence under it. In many ways, The fall of Prince Andrew isn't merely the fall of the man. It's a mirror held up to the monarchy itself. If the Queen's favorite son could act this way for decades, what else has been hidden behind the palace walls? And if silence once protected him, how many more secrets still wait in the shadows, ready to be exposed?